Hello, welcome back into the LFC Transfer Room. It's my name. My name is Jack. I'm with Tino and Drew. It's been a while since I've streamed on the channel, so there will be numerous gaps in today's stream, I'm sure of it. But I'm very excited to get rolling here today. Tino, where you are, it's hotter than usual. I'm sure this is the normal intro for the past few days, next few weeks for you guys in the UK. How are you handling the heat, my friend?
It's tough. It's very tough. Was talking about off stream about numbers and Fahrenheit and Celsius and all that, and it's mad because we don't have AC, we don't have air conditioning as much as the US. So when it does get hot, everybody just panics and just struggles. So there's not much we can do, but yeah, it's very tough.
Jen is not enjoying the heat in the United Kingdom. I know, Drew, we're probably the only American contingent really kind of making a big appearance in today's stream. But, for you, where you're at, 40 degrees Celsius is about 104 Fahrenheit. So that'll translate to our numbers. Is that? I mean, obviously it's high with no AC. How does that compare to where you're at?
I mean, right now it's way hotter, but like we hit that temperature regularly every year. So, like when I was in Vegas, it was 108 for like a week straight. I was with a conference with my girlfriend, but that's like expected.
Mm-hmm.
I think since we know that that's happening every year, there's gonna be like wildfires that we deal with it. And as Tino said, the AC there is nice. I don't have it, but I spend most of my time at my girlfriend's house because she has AC. But for y'all who don't expect it, that's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, I can only sympathize with you guys for going through that. So stay safe. Drink lots of water. I'm sure there are much better public health advisories than my one that I just did right there. But I hope everyone's well in the comments today. Today's stream, it was one that I've been kind of personally interested in, like for quite a while, with the first few preseason games for Darwin Nunez, for Liverpool in general as well. We've seen a reaction that I've not seen for anything in quite some time. I find it comedic personally. Like, I shouldn't laugh because I think it actually is getting to Darwin a little bit. But I think we'll kind of start with the macro perspective on the pressure, I guess. He had that tweet very recently where it said resiliencia. My Portuguese is very poor. So he's hearing it a little bit. Tino, for you, do you kind of agree with my perspective that he is feeling it? And should he be feeling it? Should kind of, what do you think the pressures on him should exist, I guess?
I mean, you're playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world. The pressure's always going to be on. It just feels like it's been ramped up to 1 million recently. He signs for a big fee, whether it's with add-ons or without add-ons. It's a huge number, and you look at that and you think, as a rival fan, you relish that. Look, like when Lukaku signed for Chelsea or when Maguire signed for United, we consistently ripped the living daylights out of them when they performed badly. So it's kind of expected. And if I'm honest, if it's getting to him already, he's probably at the wrong club, if I'm being brutally honest. Like, you haven't even played a competitive game yet, and you've barely played 90 minutes. You haven't even played 90 minutes in full, and he's already potentially concerned about and worried about the pressure that's on his shoulders. He just needs to forget about the price tag. He needs to forget about the social media side of it, because as much as I love Liverpool Football Club and the social media fan base, that often doesn't fully tell the full picture of how the global fan base feel in respect to a specific player or a specific moment. I think we, as our own fan base, put way too much pressure on new players coming in as well. You look at two players, Sadio Mane, who's just gone out and has gone to Bayern Munich, and Mohamed Salah. Both of them scored on the debut. Sadio scored in a 4-3 win over Arsenal, competitive debut, that is. Mo scored on his debut against Watford. It was a 3-3 draw. And they've been phenomenal ever since. And I think we need to just relax a bit. I think we need to just chill out. not put too much pressure on him from our perspective, because every other fan base is going to do it, and we need to just give him time to settle in. It takes the intensity that we play at, the style we play, tactically speaking, how we play is very, very difficult to get used to. You look at Fabinho, took a while to get going. Thiago, even Pesse, took a bit of time to get going. So I think we just need to just calm it down a little bit. I think we need to just give him time to settle in, because it's only preseason at the end of the day. He's played less than 90 minutes total so far. So
he's played barely a full 45 of total football across 2 matches. And you mentioned those competitive debuts. We're not even there yet. Like the next match that actually could be of somewhat consequence is the Community Shield. That's still in 11 days. Drew, we talked a bit before stream about your potential perspective. Kind of just give me your breakdown on the pressures that should exist, that do exist for Darwin, and kind of how you view the first few weeks of his preseason for Liverpool.
I think it's way too early to judge, but the pressure is not going to get any lighter. I think Liverpool's fans will be extremely supportive and give him time to bed in, but that time to bed in for me doesn't exactly exist the way everyone thinks. Think back to the last players that took a while to integrate. Think of like someone like Fabinho and Robertson. It's like we didn't have a proper 6 when Fabinho bedded in. Like Henderson was playing that role. Like Robertson overtook Alberto Moreno. I think for Nunez, like he's got competition in the lineup. I think Jota and Firmino to an extent. They're not going to let him take that starting spot easily, especially Jota. I think Jota had an amazing season last season. Like the numbers that he put up with the amount of time that he had, the amount of time was significantly less than Salah and Mane, and he absolutely destroyed it on the numbers. So I don't think he's gonna wait around and let Darwin Nunez like get some time to bed into the team. I think it's gonna be a fight to get into the starting 11. So I think that position is gonna be tough. And then as regards to the pressure, I think that comes with the job. I hope there's someone around him, and I believe that our players create a good unit and a good supportive unit. It seems like a really good camaraderie in the locker room. And I hope they support him and just tell him to focus on his game. And I hope he can find that mentality where, he can block everything else out. Because I think in modern day, if you're tapped into social media and you let the opinions affect you, that's not a good headspace to be in, especially for an athlete.
I read the Fabinho interview that James Pierce did in The Athletic, which was pretty interesting, just seeing kind of how, his faith and his time at Liverpool's kind of played out. He mentioned, not only the language aspect, but the bedded in time that is needed for some players. I wanted to mention this comment I saw from Ayush. He gets 46 to 49 Celsius regularly in India. That is tough. That is difficult, even for my AC comfortable body. Good to see everyone in here in the chat. And I will give my own personal blind spot, which is that I have not seen or watched either of our preseason matches. All I've seen of Darwin Nunez are the fail comps, because they both have fallen during times that I'm working, so I haven't been able to watch them live, and I haven't made the effort to go watch them back. So I haven't made any judgments because I haven't seen anything firsthand. But I wanted to. I perused through Twitter, which, as Jen mentions, it can be a bit of a bad decision to peruse through Twitter, especially after a defeat. You get like the heart rate rising, the anxiety comes in. I wanted to break down some numbers of some tweets that I saw. These are just from the last 3 days. Maybe 1 or 2 of them is a week old. There was a video of True Geordie missing headers in a video. The title of the video on Twitter, like the tweet, was Darwin Nunez receiving Trent Alexander-Arnold crosses. The video got 658,000 views, 17,500 likes. There was a video of Darwin Nunez skying a shot in a training game or training session in front of a crowd, 11 seconds long, 3.5 million views, 39,000 likes on one of the particular tweets, and thousands more on other ones. There was 52,000 likes on a tweet from an account saying Darwin Nunez has even been arrested after the game, and the video was a trash bin being put in the back of a police van. So they were saying like it was actually, I found that pretty funny, but it got 52,000 likes. There was a few other ones that had a decent amount of interactions. There's 1.4 million views on a video of him missing a ball in the box in a friendly against Crystal Palace. And then another one that's in the thumbnail of this video that got 5.8 million views, 70,000 likes on the original tweet, and thousands more pushing it across, of I Show Speed and his video where he was like trying to play footy, but he was struggling like most of us Americans do. And it was cut up with Darwin's highlights from that preseason game against Palace. I thought it was pretty funny. It was 10 seconds. It was pretty funny. It got 5.8 million views. Like it is about as big as anything that's happened in Liverpool Football Club. The amount of interactions coming around it. I found it pretty funny. Like I've kind of just got to respect it. Like they're going to milk it for as long as they can. Tino, kind of bringing it away from like the social media numbers in negative light to like the actual footballing. Drew mentioned examples that I wanted to bring up, which were Andrew Robertson and Fabinho, in terms of guys who took time to bet in. They even had inferior options ahead of them in the lineup. Calling Henderson inferior may be a little insulting. As a 6, he's inferior. So that's how I'll qualify that. Can Darwin Nunez at that price point take 6 months to a year to really bet into the side? Or do you kind of almost have to, the expectation be from day one he's kicking it?
Oh, can he take 6 months? I don't think he can. 6 months, I think is. I don't think he can take 6 months to bed in and to transition into this Liverpool side because of we've lost someone who just oozes quality and who every single game consistently performs, whether he's scoring or assisting or not. If I'm honest, I'd give him maybe 3-4 months at a push, and then by that point, if he hasn't bedded in, if he hasn't transitioned into that tactically, that's when I'd be looking and thinking, hold up a second, did we make a mistake, or is this not the player we bought? Has the price tag gotten to his head? But like the amount of pressure that comes on your shoulders, replacing those goals, replacing those performances, is a lot to take on, and then transitioning from moving to a completely different country where you barely speak the language, where your family have got to settle in as well. It's a hell of a lot of pressure, and it's a hell of a lot to take on. Ultimately, he needs to perform. He's at a club the size of Liverpool. Any club in the world that he'd have left Portugal for the same pressures would have been on him. And I think the United fans, the social media side of it, are just jealous to a certain extent. They're jealous they missed out on him. They look at him and look at United haven't signed anybody. They've got Ronaldo, who, don't get me wrong, is still a world-class striker, but he's getting old. And Arsenal are absolutely trash, and fair enough, they signed Gabriel Jesus, who's decent, but they're still nowhere near our level. It's these lower tier clubs, these guys who are trying to push for where we're at, who are trying to get to that level, who are taking the mick and having these stories about this guy who's played less than 60 minutes worth of football in pre-season. So it's nice to see, because it proves that we are still the best club in the world. When every single fan base is out there hating you and out there deliberately trying to search for things for your team rather than supporting their own team, really shows how huge we are, and how we are the one that they focus on rather than their own club.
We're a massive institution, aren't we? We're massive. Ta's making me cry here, making him saying he misses me. Ta, don't make me cry. That's not a good look for me or for you. Ta's doing actually some great work. He actually spoke to Jurgen when they were in Thailand. So Mr. Big Journalist Ta, kicking it, doing great things. Make sure you check him out. This is a comment from Ian that I wanted to kind of build into what I wanted to ask you, Drew. You said you have high expectations, but when we kind of bought him, we realized he's 22 years old. this is a guy who for the next decade, should things come good, he could be kicking it for that long for us. If you view it from that perspective, 10 years of, if that's how long you can see this guy playing, 6 months in the grand scheme of things, that's, less than that's about 5% of his total career if he played that long. And he could play longer, he could play shorter, obviously. For you, Drew, considering the age and the length of his potential career, does that play into your assessment of his expectations at all?
It does to an extent, but then if we're talking about if he's not performing in the first 6 months to a year, I'd say a season is when we need to start grading him. Because you can look at Andy Carroll. Like, we got Andy Carroll around the same age. I know vastly different players, but in terms of age, it becomes the factor of, hey, you didn't do it in your first season. Can we afford to see if you do it in your second season? Or do we look for backup options? Daniel Sturridge comes in, and lights it up. I think every player that has been in our team and has made a lasting impression has lit it up from the get-go, except for the likes of someone like Fabinho and Robertson. Van Dijk scores on his debut. Jota scores against Arsenal when he comes on in the Premier League. Diaz lights it up. Go back to Sturridge. In the preseason friendlies, he scored within the first 8 minutes of being on the pitch. I don't think it's something where it's just like, again, I'd say it's way too short to be judging him on 45, 60 minutes of play. And I'm not coming from that angle. I'm coming from, he needs to hit the ground running as fast as possible, because if it gets to the point of a year in, other people are going to get chances. And I think if the chances are there to be had, they're going to be taken. And I think Nunez will be someone who comes in and takes his chance. I think we have enough options in front to give him some cover so he doesn't feel the weight of putting the entire attacking front on him. And that's where I think he succeeds. With the likes of Salah on his right, Diaz on his left, Trent giving him crosses. I don't care if he's missing a couple point blank shots. He's going to get multiple chances a game. And he's got enough quality that I've seen where he'll put at least one of those away. So I think it's just more hoping that he gets off quickly as possible. Because the fact that he's tweeting about, getting flack after 45 minutes, it kind of shows that it comes off as he's kind of sensitive. And as Tino was just saying, with every club looking to kind of pull you down, which is natural, you don't want your players getting affected by that. Or, who knows if he's not. But again, I come from the point that don't put the pressure on him. Let's grade him after a year, but I do think he'll come good.
This is a good comment from Gary that, there's such a great support system there that I have to imagine that not only will the talent around him lift him up, but the personalities around him will make sure that I think transition won't be as difficult, I guess. There's also an interesting comment here from Anissa, and it talks about playing with the actual 9. And I'm actually gonna side on that comment. I'm putting a pin in that comment because I want to bring this up before I forget about it again. When you compare Liverpool's, I guess, last few forwards, Drew really dug into the archives with the Sturridges, the Carrolls. I'm gonna go a bit more recent, like this Jurgen Klopp era. You've got the guys likes of Jota, Firmino, and Mane, who have been the guys who have predominantly in the last few years held down that central forward spot. Whether they're a bit further forward, a bit more of a false 9, that varies. But you look at two of those 3 guys, I would argue Mane and Firmino could get away with not scoring a goal or getting an assist and performance, and it's still being classified as a good game. Jota, however, I think his overall game falls shorter than those 2. And I would say the majority, not all, but the majority of the games where he was good in were games that he scored in. So those games when the goals didn't come, you viewed those performances a little more worse off, if that makes sense. So for you, Tino, with Nunez, and doesn't have to be what he's shown so far in these last 2 games. You could even argue, looking back to the games that he played for Benfica against us, will Nunez in this year in his Liverpool career be the kind of guy who is doing the all-rounder performances when he's not scoring goals, he's still having good performances? Or are his 7 out of 10 plus performance games reliant on those goals coming through?
That's a good question. I think he can't afford not to be one of those guys, like you mentioned, Sadio, Jota, who, irrespective of whether they score or assist, they perform. I think you can't be a guy who's just carried along in this Liverpool side. This every single player, every single game has to step up to the plate, because if there's not, there's another guy waiting right behind him who's guaranteed to be able to do it. Because our standards are so high and our recruitment is so perfect and so brilliant in terms of the players we bring in, the characters, like we've mentioned, the how they're embedded within that squad and how their style of play suits our style of play. So he can't be one of those guys. He can't just be one of those guys who relies on goals and assists to get those consistent 7, 8 out of 10 performances. He just, for me, he can't. You look at Divock Origi, and don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing Divock Origi to Darwin Nunez, not one bit. They're completely separate players. One is a cult hero, and one has the potential to skyrocket in comparison. But Divock Origi, when he came in, he didn't perform as well as he should have done. And Darwin Nunez can't be one of those guys who, when he comes in, when he gets those opportunities, whether he's starting or whether he's off the bench, he needs to perform consistently, and he needs to perform from the get-go. So it's certainly going to be an interesting 6 to 12 months. This year is going to put a lot of pressure on him, especially with Haaland coming through as well. That two strikers signed for unbelievable money for two of the best clubs in the league and two of the best clubs in the world. At this present moment, it puts a lot more pressure on his shoulders. So he's got to perform. He can't be one of those guys who just coasts along when he's playing bad. You look at Roberto Firmino, who has done brilliantly for us in the past, but his numbers have coasted. His numbers have sort of slowed down slightly. And when he performs over the last 6 or so months, his levels haven't been there for me. And I sit there and think, is this him on his way out? Jurgen's shown clearly that if you're not performing, if you're not playing, if you're not scoring, if you're not putting in those performances, you'll make your way to the bench. Firmino at one point was the system. He was the player everything flowed through. And now he's barely making it into the starting 11. So Darwin Nunez has to perform consistently. He has to. There is going to be a bedding in period, no doubt about it. But there's no doubts that he has to consistently perform every single week, and you have to if you want to stay at the top clubs.
Yes, I totally agree. There's also been the interesting, me personally, and again, for those who have just come in to kind of reestablish my perspective on things, we've seen just 51 minutes of Darwin Nunez in a Liverpool shirt. We saw him play triple that against us across the two legs, and we saw ample enough. Whether it was worth £85 million, that's for you to decide amongst yourselves. There is a talented player there that Jurgen Klopp could mold into something great. Drew, I'll let you kind of give your perspective on that discussion. Is Darwin Nunez going to be the kind of guy who could grow to be an all-round performance kind of player, or is he going to kind of be predicated on the goals and the assists that will kind of judge the ebbs and the flows? Like you look at the form chart, the good are the peaks and the valleys perfectly coinciding with when the goals are coming, when they're not coming, or is it going to be a mixture of both, I guess?
I think he has to contribute to goals. Like we bought him because he scored 30 some odd goals last season and assisted, I think, double digits as well. We didn't buy him because he's Bobby Firmino. He's not a Bobby Firmino replacement. He's probably the first number 9 that we're putting out there in a long time. Like Divock kind of tried to do that, but it didn't really work. Sometimes we play him on the wing instead. But Darwin Nunez is going to be a number 9. I know he can play on the left, but Luis Diaz is there. And Nunez is going to be judged on his goal and assist contributions. If he's the man that flicks it on to Salah and then Salah squares it to Diaz, that's fine. but he has to be involved in goals. Like, that's how he's going to be judged, and he's going to get the pressure. Like, I think, like, when you look at Harry Kane, how he started this past season, he was terrible. Like, everyone was making fun of him. Everyone was just like, oh God, Man City dodged a bullet, yada, yada. But at the end of the season, he turned it back on. Whether you like him or not, you can't argue that he does it. And that's similar to how Nunez is going to be put in the conversation. Is he scoring goals? Is he assisting goals? Is he creating chances? Because I don't think you have the room to not do that. I think when we bought like the likes of Takumi Minamino, like we had him 2 years, and now he's out the door. It's like, yeah, he's in a different position. He's competing with the likes of Mo Salah and our wingers, but I think that shows that you can't really afford to have multiple seasons of betting in time when it's not like we're not going to buy anyone else. There's going to be other players coming in, and we can't afford to wait 2 seasons if we're not putting in goals or Nunez isn't working out. But he's going to be judged on goals and assists. That's why we bought him. So at the end of the day, I hope he just gets up and running as quickly as possible. The pressure's going to be there, and it's only going to be knocked back by performances. I think that's, again, Jota, like you said, he kind of ghosts games. If he was juking players left and right, like Diaz and Salah, I think the fans would get excited enough about that and visually, eye test, see what he brings to the game. But when Jota comes in, we're like, oh, he goes the game, but then he scores 2 goals. And everyone's like, yeah, that's what he does. So Nunez is going to have to find a way to function. He's not going to be taking on players. He doesn't seem like on the wings, dribbling past everyone, doing what Luis Diaz and Mo Salah do. I don't think he's gonna be a direct
It's like Darth Vader's coming
replacement.
out of you, Drew, right now.
It's the no AC over here. But I don't think he'll be the direct Firmino replacement. I think he's going to be in the team to score goals and finish chances.
Nice.
And assists.
Yeah. I want to kind of get into how it will impact other players. Anthony mentions, I have to say, my former boy, I repped him hard, and now I've kind of abandoned him a little bit. Naby Keita, maybe he's making a comeback this year. I don't know. Like a proper 9, he hasn't had one. It'd be interesting how a more central threat could help. Keita, Thiago, Elliott, Jones in the midfield. But the guy that I'm really interested in is Mohamed Salah. Jen mentioning that Nunez and Salah can tear up the league. I think that they have our front 3, I think, best. I think you can entertain an argument for Spurs front 3 versus ours. I think you can entertain that. I would take ours over there still, but I would say we have the best front 3 in the league at the moment. Maybe I'm underrating another one that should be up there in that discussion, but I think that it's interesting for me how Salah reacts to this, because I don't think he played well with Mane. At least I didn't see I thought his performances coincided with Mane. His dip in performances coincided with Mane's movement centrally. And I don't know if that was just because of playstyle matches, form. I have to imagine, though, that having a proper 9 versus a false 9 will limit and change the space that Salah can operate in. So he won't score, I think, as many goals as he scored last year. I think that's going to be a drop in that. And then I'm going to have Mr. Charlie Webb returning to me saying it was a mistake to give him the contract. Charlie, if you're watching, I hope you're not angered by that comment. For you, Tino, Salah as a guy to kind of work off of Nunez. Output. What's changing about that for the goals, the assists that he scored last year, and what can that change, I guess, going forward?
Well, Darwin Nunez coming in changes the way we play and allows us to tactically experiment. You look at it's often been talked about in the press about the transition into the 4-2-3-1 with a double pivot, the formation he loved at Borussia Dortmund and worked so well. Bringing in a number 9, like we've mentioned, is not something we've really had before in of a player of what is meant to be his quality. So it's gonna drastically change. It's going to allow us to be very unpredictable in our play, because over the last 6 months or so, even though we got to 3 finals and second in the league, it felt at times against some of the clubs who sat deep who defended on the edge of the box and just played on the counter, it felt like we still struggled, even though we brought in someone like Thiago to try and solve that issue. So allowing us to transition, allowing us to tactically change mid-game into something that we haven't done is huge. It's certainly going to impact Salah. It's going to impact the runs he makes. It's going to impact how he links up, because you haven't got a false nine anymore. You've got an out and out number 9, a guy who's there to score consistently. Whereas Firmino wasn't that guy. Firmino, Jota, Mane has played that role with the guys who linked up the play, who allowed us to transition from attack to defense so smoothly, and allowed players like Sadio Mane, when he played on the wing, like Mohamed Salah, like Luis Diaz at the back end of last season since he came in, to really turn on the style and really create that space, because they dragged so many players out of position. Having a number 9, an out number 9, is really going to be interesting to see what spaces that creates. Because does it, if he's driving into the box, does that create more space for our wingers to drop off? That then limits the space our fullbacks have got in terms of attacking, because we do a lot of our attacking play through our fullbacks. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see how we transition into that. If we do, it's going to be interesting to see how, like we've mentioned previously, like you mentioned in your comments about Naby Keita, and how the midfield adapt to that. Because having a number 9, you've now got someone like Thiago who can pinpoint those balls into that number 9. You've got Trent and Robbo on the wings who can whip them in, which is, again, something we haven't had. It'd be interesting to see how we transition. It'd be interesting to see where that leaves. For me personally, I'd like to see where that leaves Harvey Elliott, because Harvey Elliott, as an attacking midfielder, his defensive work rate might not be as optimal as Henderson's if he's on that right side, or as optimal as James Milner or Naby Keita or whoever else is there, because of how young he is and he's still learning his craft and trade. It'd be interesting to see, with him in the team and Darwin Nunez, how they interlink, how the midfield interlinks between them. So it's going to be a really, really exciting season. It's going to allow us, for me, to transition into a team that is guaranteed at least 2 trophies per season. For me, at least. It has the potential to go down that route.
Very interesting. Guaranteed 2 per season. I'm not complaining about that.
That's a ballsy statement, so.
I think some people the taste immediately after last season was disappointment, because you fell short in the 2 biggest ones, and it came as a double punch. Like you have the right hook immediately followed with a left, another left hook. I don't know nothing about boxing to give you a good analogy there. That was quite terrible for me in that week. So, but I think last season was very interesting. So, in my absence of thought right now, my brain completely just turned off when you stopped talking, Tino. Drew, I'll toss it to you. With on the Salah Nunez side of things, with a number 9, taking opportunities away from Salah. This isn't a slander to Nunez. He will take opportunities that Salah might have gotten. That's just how the sport works. Who is scoring more goals next season of the 2 of them? Is it going to be Darwin or is it going to be Mohamed?
It's going to be Salah.
You think it's going to be Salah?
I think that was a really interesting point, was when Salah signed his contract, because the way it was revealed, like the build up around everything, Salah is our main man. He's our highest paid player. He's our highest paid player in history. He's going to be the main man. And I'm really curious to see how that affects Nunez betting in, because if Salah is the one still chasing goals, chasing the golden boot, where does Nunez fit into that equation? I'm curious to see his personality in that as well. Because one of the things I really like about Jota was, I saw him on Wolves, but I really loved watching him in Portugal, where he got to butt heads with Ronaldo, where he'd take chances off of Ronaldo, and Ronaldo would do his classic throw his hands up and whine, and Jota would just kind of like smirk at him and then like not even offer an apology. And I loved seeing that. And you see that when Jota's in the field as well with like Salah. He's kind of like, no, like I had the shot, I'm taking the shot. Diaz, same kind of attitude where it's like, if you're in a better position, okay, but if not, I'm taking the shot. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how Nunez fits in, because as a traditional number 9, he should be the guy scoring goals, or he could be the one who predominantly his game is assists. Maybe he's the link-up guy, takes the ball down, passes it, holds it up, passes it to Salah, quick 1-2s. Maybe that becomes his role, and maybe he gets 15 goals and Salah gets high 20s next season. That would be a successful season in my mind. And I think that's probably going to be the definition of success for Nunez in this next season, is if he can get 15 goals and double-digit assists, and Salah scores another, high 20s in goals. Diaz gets above 10, Jota gets above 10. Those kind of numbers, those win you titles. So I think that's his clear way in. I think if he, I think Salah's still the main man, and I think that's what it's going to come down to at the end of the day. Everything about his contract renewal says he's the main man. So I think it's how Nunez can work into that team, get his numbers, and support Salah, to be honest.
I'm going to disagree with you slightly, Drew. I think that it's and this is just based on, this isn't really based on fact. It's kind of just based on what I've not seen and what I have seen. What I have seen is Darwin Nunez is a great goal scorer through the middle. Mohamed Salah is a great goal scorer out on the right, but he hasn't really played a full season with a guy like Nunez. If he does what you want him to do, which is high 20s goals, 15 for Nunez, Salah is the greatest winger in the Premier League. The Premier League's ever seen if he can do that with a proper number 9 taking those spaces, because you just don't see wingers, wide forwards scoring that many goals with proper number 9s in history, because it's just so difficult to operate that many spaces. What I interpreted this as was we want to use the all-round game of Salah a bit more. We want to utilize his ability to create, his ability to beat players off the dribble, and him to play 20, 30, 40 yards from goal as a great footballer, and also have a threat much closer to goal who you have in Darwin Nunez, where when Salah is kind of double-teamed, then you have a guy who can really make you pay for that. That's not to say that Salah will have any reduced responsibility, but I think he kind of leans into the comment that, I want to find it. There's a comment about plans. It basically was just, here it is from Alan. In terms of having A, B, and C plans, Nunez, I think, really does almost offer a plan and a half difference. He has an aerial threat. He has a physicality about him we haven't had from any of our forwards. He's also just going to make runs that we haven't had before, and I don't think he's going to change things too much. I don't know if he's going to get double digits like you think, Drew. I think that's going to a bit too much playmaking from him, but that's going to be very interesting. I think one thing I want to say before we go is I think that the Nunez discussion, and this I'll give my perspective and let you guys kind of respond to it, is overcasting a bigger issue for Liverpool, and that's the midfield, which I think lacks the physical presence we need to play if we want to continue in this Klopp system, which is a wide open match in transitions. We always get burnt by the likes of West Ham. I always use them as a great example because they play phenomenally on the counter. If they can just win the ball back, beat our initial high press, they can play out from the back incredibly quick. And a midfield 3, which are our best midfield 3, admittedly, of Thiago, Keita, and Fabinho, it lacks that physical edge. Fabinho is a great disruptor, but they don't run the match as well as I would like to. I kind of want to get your thoughts on the midfield, and if that could almost play into things elsewhere, if that makes sense. Drew, I'll toss it to you first. It's an inverse.
I don't think that's our best midfield. I think just from preseason and based on Harvey Elliott's contribution in the first 4 games of last season, that our best midfield would be Fabinho, Thiago, Carvalho, or Elliott. And I think that offers the solution to breaking down defenses.
But in terms of, Drew, I want to interrupt you there. With that midfield, though, I totally agree. with the breaking down the low blocks.
Mm.
But what if you're playing against City and that match is wide open? Is Carvalho or Elliott offering you that presence in the midfield that can kind of slow the match down at times, can keep up with the intensity of the match in that midfield?
I think that's exactly why we bought Thiago. He's the kind of guy who can receive the ball and quickly touch it to someone to give us that space. I don't think it's a situation like you tend to see it's like really tight and then one pass just releases all of the pressure. That's why we got Thiago. And I think it was the game we drew against City before the FA Cup semi-final, where Thiago was doing exactly that, where he got the ball and then he'd clear it out to someone, and then City's press, it just disappears because he's got it to someone with so much space. I think that's why we got Thiago, and that's his role in games like that. Harvey Elliott has surprised me with his ability in tight spaces. I think he's another one who can get the ball, hold on to it, and find the right man. Fabinho, I don't think has that same ability, but I think in those kind of situations, what you need is someone who can receive the ball, know where everyone is, and find the right pass as quickly as possible to release pressure. I think we have the guys that do that. I think the likes of Keita is someone we bought to dribble past players in the midfield and link up with the attack to add that extra dimension and that kind of like a box to box. I know he played a slightly different role in Bundesliga, but I think we got him for that kind of role. But I'm much more excited with the likes of Carvalho coming in as alongside Elliott looking very sharp in preseason, because I think they offer we're not going to be playing City every week. We're going to be playing a lot of teams that sit back, and we're going to need the right tools to unlock their defenses. And I think we have the right tools to do that. So I think the midfield's in an interesting position. I think the likes of signing Bellingham next year could complete that puzzle, but I think we have enough tools at the moment to give us a really good midfield, and very exciting times ahead.
You mentioned a lot of the qualities that a variety of players possess: the dribbling of Keita, the passing under the pressure from Thiago, the tight spaces of Carvalho, breaking up play of Fabinho. And then if you could roll it all into one, add a physical box-to-box element to it, you get Steven Gerrard. Just imagine if you had him in this Klopp system. Like, that would genuinely, I mean, that would be just so I'd be so happy if we could just like take him from 2000, and I don't know what you take him from, but you go back in time, you pluck him from that timeline, you stick him here for a year, you bring him back, and it's like he's a year older for no reason back in 2005 whenever you took him, but he realizes what happens in the future, and he's like, all right, I won us a title in 2023, but I'm going to have to suffer for the next 15 years. So maybe that's why he actually threw the match against Villa, because we took him from the future, from the past, or through the match against City with Villa. Interesting. Tino, for you, bringing in the Nunez thing, there was a bit of discussion on the 4-3-3 versus the 4-2-3-1. The midfield and how it'll play with Nunez, do you foresee any sort of formation change, any change in how the midfield operates because of the Nunez signing?
I think long term, Klopp wants to. I don't think we'll immediately change to a 4-2-3-1 or any other formation. I think what Jurgen's trying to do with Nunez coming in, and players like Harvey Elliott, Curtis Jones, and Carvalho is add another string to his bow to allow us to transition, to change the style, to change formations on a whim, to eke out those results against those low block teams. Because Drew mentioned it, we're not playing Manchester City every week. If we were, we'd storm the league. If I'm being perfectly honest, maybe not a team of their quality, but if we were, we'd. When you play out against Liverpool, when you try and outplay them on the ball, you put us in the position that we are the most dominant in, because we can outplay any team in world football. You look at the Champions League final, Madrid just sat back for 90 minutes and did absolutely nothing because they were scared to try and play us, because they were scared to try and out-battle us in the centre of the park. So they sat back, didn't allow us to create that space for our fullbacks, which just ultimately destroyed us and didn't allow us, and a phenomenal world-class performance by our keeper. But you look at that midfield, Nunez coming in, having the double pivot. changes so much and allows us that unpredictable nature, and having a vocal point up front drags other players out of position. It drags the defenders maybe a bit more central to create the space just in front of those defenders, allowing the wingers to cut inside to get that creative, to do those little balls down the channel for the centre forward to smash in. It allows us so much, and him coming in for me doesn't really change a whole lot defensively, but offensively it allows us so much. And I do think midfield wise, as much as I've said previously, I think we're missing a midfielder, and I still agree with that. I'm confident in where we're at and where we're going into this season.
First of all, hey, Laura, I hope you're enjoying your holiday wherever you are venturing. Bless you, Tino, as well. I know that you muted yourself for that sneeze, but I can only imagine that's what you were doing. Maybe you're just throwing me off. You're just like, I'm going to make him think I just sneezed, give him a blessing. If you actually didn't sneeze, I'm going to be very, very angry. But I think you did sneeze. The last way I want to end the stream is a bit more positive. All right. I'm now going to be the Jack who has not watched any of the preseason matches, which is true. But I'm going to be the Jack who sees all these fail compilations, and I'm nervous. I'm thinking we just spent 85 million pounds on a Uruguayan version of I Show Speed and his inability to control a football. Tino, I need you to calm me down. Why should I not be worried about the fact that I've seen all these fail comps and I haven't seen anything positive from Nunez yet?
Name a transfer that Jurgen Klopp and FSG has got wrong since Jurgen Klopp came in.
Naby Keita. I hate Naby Keita so much.
I disagree. I don't think that's a wrong transfer. We bought him for the right reasons. He hasn't, fair enough, hit the level consistently that we'd like. But when he's played, he's been phenomenal. And you talk about your best midfield on paper. You mentioned earlier on the stream, Henderson. No, God, no. Fabinho, Thiago, and Naby Keita. For me, I completely agree there. Naby Keita's on his day is in our best midfield. You might go back and mention Stephen Corker or whatever, the centre back who was a striker, or Ben Davies, who's recently joined Rangers. Fair enough, on the pitch it didn't work out, but financially, but it worked. It filled a position that we needed at the time. It allowed us to have that backup and have those players as a backup to really to stop us. Essentially, it appeased the fans, those two signings. Do I think that's a wrong transfer? No, I don't. I don't think Jurgen Klopp has got a transfer wrong during his entire Liverpool career up to this point, and that goes to how closely Michael Edwards and now Julian Ward has worked, and it goes to the characters that we get in that dressing room.
Drew, Tino did not do a good enough job of placating my fears. Nah, you did play well, Tino. I'm still a little reservations though. I've seen the failed comps. I haven't seen a goal yet. He's a guy we brought in to score goals. He could be our club record signing. Well, he is our club record signing if he, does the thing and scores goals and we win stuff and we pay him the extra amount of money we need to pay. Drew, why should I not be worried? Or should I be worried?
I'd say arguably the best striker that's ever played for us, Luis Suarez, said that Barcelona should have signed him. And he was upset that they didn't sign him. I think that everyone around him is going to support him and help him bed into the team. I think we all know that he can score goals. It's like whether he will do it for Liverpool, the answer is yes. I don't care how bad a striker you are. If you're somewhat talented and you have 5 chances a game of Trent or Salah putting it on a plate, you're going to finish one of them. I think we need to trust in Klopp. I think we need to trust in what we're hearing from the players. But for me, ultimately, it comes down to Suarez saying that Barca should have signed him. And, yeah, he backs this guy. So that, for me, is enough to wait and see what he does. And I think the fact that he cares too, like maybe it seems a little sensitive, but he cares and he wants to be doing well. So I think that attitude and that amount of emotion about how he's doing, all funneled in the right direction with everything you hear around from the people supporting him, we're going to see a really brilliant player over the next however many years.
So you're saying, Drew, expect Luis Suarez. I think
expect someone that Luis Suarez backs.
That's some good politician speak.
He's a tough character to crack. He chewed Henderson out in training. You hear about the stories, so Suarez has no problems calling someone out. So backing someone, I'm ready to see how he does over a season. I'm
interested as well. I think this is an interesting discussion. Obviously, we're still 11 days out from the Community Shield, which will have probably the best look we'll get at him, and that's not even a competitive match yet. Still quite a bit till that. But yeah, I'm really excited to see really kind of how this turns. I'll let you guys get your final thoughts on Nunez, on Liverpool, on anything. Tino's freshly shaven face. Tino, I'll let you go first.
I'm looking forward to see how he plays. I'm looking forward to the Community Shield. I'm going. So I'm really looking forward to. I don't think he'll start that game, if I'm honest. I really don't think he'll start the game, but I think we'll see an introduction. I think Jurgen Klopp will treat that as a friendly, if I'm being honest. I don't think Jurgen Klopp's looking at that match and thinking, oh yeah, I really want that silverware. I really want that Community Shield, because I mean it's a pointless trophy. I think he looks at that and thinks, this is a chance I've got to get a full 60, 90 minutes of my best 11. And I don't think at this present time, Nunez instantly comes in and hits that best 11. I think once he's had time to bed in, once he's transitioned into us tactically, I think he's in there. But I think at present, that's an opportunity that Jurgen Klopp will look at and think, I'm gonna play with my trust, with the players I trust at the moment, and try and bring Nunez in to see how he fares against one of the best clubs in the league, in the world.
Drew, final thoughts.
Everything I said around the pressure around Darwin, I think is true. I think the pressure is heavy. I think it's going to be there, and I think only by performing will he put doubters at bay. But I give him my full support. I think he's in the best place he can be to thrive. He has everything around him that he needs, and I'm expecting a good season from him, expecting to see brilliant things, and this enough to get him into the first team and have wonderful years ahead. But I'll go against Tino in that I want to win the Community Shield. I want to get one win over City early. I want to just have that statement over it. And it's one trophy that Klopp hasn't won. I know it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but I want it in the cabinet. Why not?
After losing the, what was it called? The Bangkok. I want to say Community Shield. I don't know what it was. The Bangkok title that looked like a PC fan that United won. And Anissa makes a good point as well. We have a bad record in the Community Shield. We lost to Arsenal, the Community Shield in 2020 on penalties. That was quite depressing. I've made some bold statements on this here channel, and I've backed myself into some corners late in streams. Some of you may remember when I started talking about Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and how I think he's maybe our best midfielder. Because it got late into a stream. When I get late into streams, I get feisty. And you know what? All right, this will be a joke, but I was going to say if we lose a Community Shield, I'd be starting a Jurgen Klopp out brigade. I'm not actually going to do that. That would quite literally, I'd be burned at the stake, like from a distance by all of you guys. So, that's going to do it for today's stream. Thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate the discussion as always. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're 11 days out from the Community Shield. We still have one friendly on Thursday. Is there one between then, the Leipzig one?
There's two more after that.
Oh, well, there are two more after that. Really?
Yeah, we have one the day after the Community Shield.
Yeah. And then what's the one in between the Leipzig one?
Salzburg.
There it is. We go with both Red Bull clubs. Are we a Red Bull club? Like, I know we're kind of owned by them, aren't we? Like,
I
it's
don't
We're
know.
not owned by Red Bull. I think
don't
we
think
just
it's-
got good dealings with them.
who was it that bought 10%?
Oh God, I have no idea.
Who bought 10%
No idea.
of
Red Bird, Red
Yeah.
Bird Capital, something like that.
Yeah, Red Bird Capital. Are they all right? Come on, there's
They also own Toulouse, and I
Bull.
think there was interested in AC Milan.
Red Bird Capital. All right, if I've just believed that we're owned by yeah, they own like Milan and stuff.
Yeah.
All right,
You're
that
getting
was
sleepy, Jack. You're
that
getting
was
tired.
sheesh. Yeah, that was. I genuinely looked at those two matches and thought like, oh yeah, I guess it's because Red Bull owned 10% of us. Nope. All right, that was. I was genuinely like in the thought like, what if we were like Red Bull Liverpool FC at one point? Like that would be.
I think the entire city of Liverpool would probably get like pitchforks out and stop drinking Red Bull and charge to wherever their headquarters are and try and kill a lot of them. So like
We don't need any more American hate, Jack. Let's wrap up this stream.
Let's get out of here. All right, I need to just learn how to end streams before I start like walking myself into corners even more. That's been Tino. That's been Drew. I shouldn't call myself Jack. I should make a fake name when I make these bad takes, but I'm Jack. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like today's video, and we'll catch you in our